So yesterday morning, I was going through my usual routine of streaming chess and losing 90% of my blitz games, and to turn around my poor results, I knew I had to challenge somebody who I could defeat. I saw that Samay Raina was online. He was playing some 10-minute games and getting a little bit of work before comedians on board with the Indian Grandmaster Ganguly. So I sent him a couple of 10-minute challenges, and one game was longer than the other, and the hope was just to show you intermediate chess and turn it into an intermediate chess lesson. So you can use the timestamps on the video player to jump around. If you're just interested in the Cat Gambit in the title, go toward the end of the video and you will see what happens. All right, first game. I began with d4, and I don't know Samay's openings, and by the way, he is just the letter M because he's BM, which is Blundermaster. Knight f6, and I played like this, very standard, trying to go e4. He has the option between going into the Queen's Gambit declined or playing the Nimzo Indian. He does that. I play g3. So this is a system that kind of resembles the Catalan, which is a setup for white after d4, c4, knight f3, followed by putting the king's bishop on this long diagonal, the fianchetto on g2. And these positions are really nice because after something like this, black capturing on c4 opens up your bishop. And in the long run, you will win this pawn back. At the same time, you will end up with two central pawns because you will retain your E and D pawns, whereas this pawn will go away. And that's kind of the whole point of this setup. You know, black will do something like castles, knight to f3. And like I said, if dc4, you'll win the pawn back in the long run by playing knight, going like this, or just taking the full center. I have a video out on the Catalan if you'd like to know a little bit more about this setup. But Samay fell directly into my trap. Well, not really a trap, he just took too early, and now I'm not going to develop at all or take the center. This bishop is all of a sudden a target. I only have one check in this position that makes any sense. That is not the check, it is with the queen. And now you hit the bishop and the king, and if this, there is takes. And Samay just resigned. I did say that one of the games was longer than the other. We will jump into that game in a second. I still wanted to show this game because it could be useful for some of the folks that are interested in the queen's pawn or exploring, a new opening. If you play e4 but you want to go for the Catalan, try to go for the Catalan. The game is over here because after bc6, queen b4, I'm just up a piece. I mean, he can continue the game with something like queen takes pawn, but I'll play knight f3, I'll develop my bishop, and let's not forget that he has the tripled pawns. Isolated, by the way. So he rematched me, and it didn't make sense to just play a game so fast. So we go to the second game. Now, this game I'm going to walk you through my entire thought process move by move, and I think you will enjoy it quite a bit. So he played e4, and I know that against e5, he plays the King's Gambit. I didn't want to give him that satisfaction, so I went for d5 instead. But when he took, I didn't take back right away, and I played knight f6. This is an invitation to a gambit, excuse me, after white plays the move c4. White can hang on to the pawn here, and what black does is play the move c6. And the point is that if you take this pawn, now you have very good control of this square. And white is going to have difficulty taking the center. If white plays knight f3, for example, trying to go d4, you will play e5. And this is actually known to be better for black, because black has a lead in development, even at the cost of one pawn. This position's very interesting, very kind of cool way to get a player so quickly out of their comfort zone with this. It's better for white to just play normal chess, like with d4, knight f3, or knight c3, which is what Samay did in this game, or to not take the pawn when it arrives on c6. You can play d4, and now this is a Caro-Kann defense by what's called transposition, a different move order. I like this as a weapon with the black pieces. There's a very fun line after d4, bishop g4. This is called the Portuguese Gambit. You could go look that up, do a little bit of research on it. Can lead to some very crazy and dynamic and interesting positions. Otherwise, like what Samay did in this game, I just took back and he played bishop c4. So then I played the move e6. So I'm guarding my knight in the center, and now already we have a few things I'm going to kind of walk you through move by move. When you play e6, you block in your bishop this way, So long run, you're probably going to put it out there. Bishop will come here and castle. We will then decide what to do in the center of the board. That's exactly what happens. I finish my development with bishop to e7. You might say, Levy, why not bishop to c5, for example? Well, it's not good to just absent-mindedly put bishops into the center of the board, especially if they can be hit with enemy pawns. This is something that not just beginners do, intermediate players do this all the time. They just put the bishop in the center because that's what they think it should be, but then this comes, and now you have to move the bishop again. And bishop d6 also doesn't quite make sense. Not necessarily a blunder, but my queen would no longer guard this. But they're both okay. So bishop e7, castles, castles. And here, Samay plays d3. He could have been a little bit more greedy and played d4, maybe taking the whole center. And like I said, I continue with my plan of b6 and trying to put my piece on b7. So here, the first kind of instructive moment: take. Bishop takes d5, e takes d5. Objectively speaking, it's probably still equal here. It is a fair trade, 3 points per side, but this trade is really only good for black. Why? What I always like to say is, unless there's a very good reason to do it, don't just trade bishops for knights. Just don't do it. Because now I'm just left with a light squared bishop. So my light square control suddenly goes up a lot. And if I just put the bishop somewhere where it has open scope, and it's not boxed in, it will be really difficult for white to fight against. At the same time, this could be a weakness, and in this particular case, it's not. So that's where, like, the offset is. Well, if you create a weakness, then you can trade bishop for knight, of course. But when he does this, look at what he does to the structure. The pawn moves this way, and that opens up the door for my bishop. So he plays d4. Now, a move like bishop to a6 attacking the rook isn't a good move, because he'll just move his rook to the open file, and I've just helped him develop. At this point, I have a few options. I don't yet know where I want this bishop to go, so I played rook to e8, because maybe this bishop will go back, or that way, or to f6. It's not yet quite clear, and he copied me. Now, a very important move here as it pertains to the pawn structure, c6. And you say, Levy, why aren't you playing like bishop g4, bishop f5? Both of those moves are good. They would be perfectly reasonable moves. But the thing about c6 is that this kind of a structure negates the effect of the c3 knight. So the knight can't have any pressure on this pawn. It has no access to the queen side. I mean, knight a4 doesn't accomplish anything, and it can't go to the center. So if this knight wants to go anywhere in the rest of the game, it will need to spend a full move going backwards before going to the other side of the board. I also now can move my queen, because before I couldn't, and that's why the structure is kind of like placed the right way. That was my logic with playing the move c6. Now, could I have played bishop f5? Probably, but at some point I'm going to have to play this move. c5, a little bit too weakening. So he plays h3, and now I develop my bishop to f5. That's not a really difficult move to make. I'm just developing my bishop, and his most natural move here, undoubtedly, is bishop to f4. If I'm looking at this position with white, I'm thinking the bishop just has to come out, okay? It has to go there. He does have bishop g5 in this particular position, because if I take it, he will take my rook, and then he will take back, but obviously bishop g5 doesn't look possible, and normally isn't because you just lose material. Bishop f4 here, and don't even think about it, but he played queen e2. So this is kind of already where, like, the 1470, he's 1470 at the time of this game, that's like where it becomes kind of more obvious. Like, the move queen to e2 doesn't let me move my bishop, because if I move my bishop, he's just gonna take. But does it create a threat? Does it improve white's position long-term? No. And I just finished my development with knight d7, and now my rook actually does have protection, and in the future his queen could just be a target. So there's no real long-term plan behind the move queen to e2, and it would be better for him to just put his bishop there because it's a much more flexible move. It doesn't commit his queen directly in the line of fire of my rook. And actually on this very next move, he thought about it, and he was like, well, I kind of don't like that the rook has scope on my queen, right? So you have to try to kind of come up with a 2 or 3 move plan, which is hard to do in 10-minute chess, but that's why I'm doing this kind of video to walk you through that thought process. Now bishop f4 probably still is possible. It's probably still the best move, but now you're starting to worry about attacks on your queen. So he played bishop to e3, and now that I can move my bishop without the rook getting taken, where's the best square for the bishop? Think about that for a second. I don't know, I'll take a sip of water, I guess. If you said bishop to d6, you're 100% right. This is the best move. If you plug this position into even the computer of all the moves black can play, this one improves the position the most. Why? Because with one simple move, you've now taken away the f4 square, you fight for the center, you stare at the king's area, and the rook is open. Are you winning? No, absolutely not. And here Samay plays the best move. He plays queen d2, right? But now we're seeing like kind of like weird shuffling. Now for him, the best thing to do on the next move with queen to d2 would be to play the move bishop to f4. For example, if I play the move a6, here the best move for white is bishop f4, trading a very passive piece for a very active piece. And if I trade, he now improves the positioning of his queen, hits my bishop, is maybe going to come in here and threaten stuff. That is the way you play positions with a totally symmetrical pawn structure. You'll notice we have 3 and 4, right? So the bishop coming to f4 would be really useful. So you got to think about that. That's why in this position I played queen c7, because it doesn't let him play bishop to f4. And now my rooks are connected. Now he played knight to e2. But what's funny, if you look at this position, what is white's best move as a result of queen c7? Continue to think about the concept of trades. Like I just showed you that this would be the best trade. Think about the concepts of trades after this move. How does my opponent create a threat slash offer a trade here? That move is knight to h4. That is actually, again, if you look at the computer, it's the only move in the position. Hits the bishop and would force me to block myself in or just back up and let him trade. Because this bishop is very good and it would improve his position. This is the only light squared bishop on the board. And I would have to come back to e6. At the same time, kind of interesting, that's not possible right now. So it is possible as a result of this. And during the game, I was like, I think he should go knight h4. He didn't do that. He played knight e2. When this knight moves away, it cedes control of the e4 square. So which of my pieces have I not yet improved? My knight. And now I'm going to go to e4. Right? And now again, knight to h4 is possible. He does that. I use the concept of danger levels here. I don't need to get my bishop out of danger if I can attack something more valuable, right? Now he plays queen c1. Again, the queen has now made 3 moves, and his rooks are not connected. And I did not want to trade. You should not trade. Bishop back to d7. It's okay to retreat. Because now what is his knight doing here, right? His knight now has no way forward. It's on the side of the board. And during the game, I was expecting him to use the queen behind the pawn and push the pawn as a result of the move knight c3. Just to create progress on this side of the board. Somehow. Maybe pressure me here once this opens. And the game, he went back to c3. Here I thought for a little bit, and I thought about taking, and my logic is that this messes up his structure. This trade helps me because it messes up his structure, and I can maybe double my rooks, put pressure down the file, maybe c5 to open up the queen in the future. But then I decided on the move bishop b4, and my logic was, well, I hit this twice, and if he takes me, I'm not going to take. I'm going to take his rook. If he takes me here, then I will take, so I'm going to win material. At the same time, if he goes back to d2, well, then I will just take the bishop. And again, I will have 2 bishops for 2 knights, which is, I mean, it's a nice advantage to have. Then you will slowly open up your position. That's what you should do when you have the bishops. Try to open the position. It's just what I was going to go for. Do I want 2 bishops versus 2 knights, or should I have damaged his structure? Probably I should have damaged his structure, actually. But then after bishop to b4, Samay did some... His title struck here. And he played the move knight takes d5. I don't actually know what was going on here. I think this was him offering me the Cat Gambit. This is the beginning of the Cat Gambit. The Cat Gambit, you will learn in a second, is the following. After I took back, he played the move c3 attacking my bishop, and I went back to d6. At this point, Samay offered me a draw. And he wrote in the chat, "Hey man, I'm playing here with my cat, and my cat is very sick. I have to take my cat to the vet. If I don't, it's a matter of life and death. Can you accept the draw, please?" And I figured, well, all right, I'm a good guy, you know. I believe in, you know, in the health of humans and animals and all sorts of living beings, so I will accept the draw offer, and I will sacrifice 44 points of my rating to you, Samay. I will. And that's how I fell for the Cat Gambit. Apparently, this is like a massive inside joke on the Samay channel. He apparently offers, you know, these kinds of things, like, for fun, and the whole community was in on it. The chat, like, completely exploded. Like, 500 people came in, like, oh, I can't get... So, anyway, it's all in good fun. On a serious note, I will end the analysis of the game with something like, you know, if the bishop had gone back to d2, for example, there would be a capture here, and like I said, we would try to fight with the two bishops. At this point, you would try to create the move c5, as long as you're not weakening the pawn on d5 too much. That would sort of be the issue. But what I should have played, which actually was probably better, is this trade. And I can't end the video on that, even though obviously that is where the game ended. Really, the question here would be, how does black maximize the pressure here, and how do you play with the pawns versus the pieces? I did say that you would maybe double up your rooks. A good way to do that would be to win a tempo with the move rook to e4. Now, if white plays the move g3, white is chronically weakening the center. And not to mention, there might even be a sacrifice here. So you always have to look, when you have a giant kind of lineup of pieces at the opponent's king side, that these tactics do await. Knight g2, for example, bishop takes, a move away from checkmate, white would have to defend. And again, I'm just coming in with all of my pieces here. The rook, the queen, the bishop, the two rooks, I should say. So g3 wouldn't have worked, and instead something like knight f3 and rook a to e8. And so on and so forth, trying to improve the position, maybe at some point throwing in pawn play, and black would try to capitalize on the advantage. Even though the material is completely equal, this position is actually -2. So basically 2 full pawns worth of evaluation in black's favor. Now, here, before I sign off here on this video, obviously, you know, there is a joke involved here, but if you can get past that and you're not offended by humor, which a surprising amount of people are, and will be upset that we took a draw in that position. On a serious note, there's a couple of takeaways from this video. So first of all, there's the 2 openings that we talked about, the Nimzo, the Catalan, the Portuguese Gambit, if you'd like to go investigate those. At the same time, it's the concept of when you should trade bishops for knights. So definitely a concept to review, how to play positions of symmetrical pawn structure, and you'll notice thinking, what does my opponent want? What trades in the position would be good? Where is my worst placed piece and how can I activate it, right? They make a move, you go, does that move create a threat? No? Okay, great, then I can continue to improve my position. When I make these videos, there is a lot of these little bits of information to pick up on. I don't always necessarily go, okay, now we're gonna learn this concept, but you should listen closely because that's what chess is all about. There's all of these tiny details, even throughout a game which lasted, what was that, like 16 moves, 17 moves? Every move, there's a little bit of battling going on and kind of thinking, and a piece moves and a square is no longer controlled, for example, things like that. All right? If you want me to do more stuff like this in the future, but on a more serious note where we play a game from start to finish, let me know. I'll see you in the next video.